All right, good evening, everyone. The Platteville Journal, the City of Platteville, and the Main Street Program welcome you to the 2017 Platteville Candidate Forum. I think we have set a record for the number of races and the number of candidates that we have here, and we're very happy that everyone has shown up tonight, and that you have shown up to watch, and that you have shown up to watch on Prism Channel 80, I believe it is. Tonight's forum is intended to help Platteville voters make an informed choice in the April 4th Common Council and School Board elections. Our intention tonight is to guide a conversation among the candidates into both city and school district issues separately, and how these candidates feel about these issues. The questions were all raised during journal coverage of city government and the school district. We also have an opportunity to send questions to me via email at editor@theplattvillejournal.com over the next bit if you have a question that you'd like the candidates to answer that you haven't heard brought up. So this is a two-part forum tonight. We'll begin now with the two candidates for the Common Council at Large seat, and also the two candidates for the District 2 seat. And after this, we will have the 5 candidates for the 3 school board seats. And then we will start tonight by introducing the 4 council candidates, asking them what they feel the most important issue of this campaign is, and we'll conclude by asking each candidate why we voters should vote for that candidate. And in between, we'll cover the issues that have come up in the campaign, and maybe even issues the candidates themselves bring up. I'll tell the candidates this: there's no formal time limit for an answer, but I'd ask the candidates to answer the questions completely yet succinctly. So that would be the only limit, I suppose, we'd add on that. All city voters will be able to vote for the at-large seat to replace retiring Alderman Amy Seaboth Wilson. And the 2 candidates for the at-large seat are to the far left, Barb Stockhausen. She is the owner of H&R Block, and she represented District 1 on the council from 2013 to 2016. Next to her is Deb Browning, who is a retired teacher, and she is a member of the City Commission on Aging. She is making her first try for elective office. Everyone who is a voter, registered voter in the city, can vote for either Barb or Deb. Now, the other race is in District 2, and it's for only people who live in District 2. And the 2 candidates are Eileen Nichols. She's a real estate agent. And I forgot to ask you this, Eileen. You've been on the Common Council how long?
I believe I was elected for the first time in 1996.
20 years about. She has been the Common Council president since 2013. And next to her is Bill Kramer, who is a member of the city's Commission on Aging. He is making his first try for elective office, correct?
Yes.
As a write-in candidate. All right, now that I've briefly introduced the candidates, it's time for the candidates to introduce themselves and answer the question of why they're running. And we'll start with Barb.
Oh, I was asked to run. I served 3 years, as was mentioned, and that was 2013 to 2016. We accomplished quite a bit during that period of time. Obviously, the most important one was the library project, as most of you know, at the top of Main Street. Now we're going to go into another era of new change in our community. Pioneer Ford property, certainly a major issue, and development that I hope to help go through that process. We certainly continue to look at our budget, which is demanding. But being a business owner, I do understand budgets, and I do understand how to hire staff and maintain our staff level. So that's why I'm running for office.
Okay, Deb.
Well, I'm running for a couple of reasons. One of which I feel, like Martin Luther King says, that a budget is a moral document. And in that moral document, we have priorities. And I feel, as a candidate, that I can bring some expertise to that. I ran a corporation that I started in my living room, and it grew in 10 years to $6 million in sales to a 20,000 foot building. I then started my second career as a teacher for 25 years. in out east. It's not around here, but out east. And from there, I was the president of my local of 700 members. I also did a great deal of lobbying in the capital of that state for education. I also worked with the budgets within the city in which I lived. So I'm quite familiar with budgets, and I believe that I can bring to this council some out-of-the-box thinking and alternatives to what we have right now. And I'm running because I believe also that the draconian cuts made to some of our services is not acceptable. It's not moral. It should not be our priority. It's not our legacy. And these are the things that I bring to the race. And my slogan is I am very proud, and I will be very loud, all right, to serve you. And I believe in a great deal of transparency, and I think the people of this great city of ours needs transparency. And I believe in definitely fiscal responsibility. We should be held accountable. Council people should be held accountable. I want you to hold me accountable if you so choose to vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, Eileen.
As you noted, I've served on the council for quite some time. I also, at the time that I first ran, the Mr. Joe Leininger, some people may remember him, he came to me and said, I'm not running again, and I think that you should put your name down as a candidate. So it was a shock to me at the time because I really hadn't thought about doing it. But I said yes, and I enjoy serving on the council. I enjoy working for the citizens of Platteville, which is what I believe I'm doing when I do serve. It's my way of volunteering, giving back to this community, because my husband and I both were students at the UW Platteville, and we met there and decided that we wanted to make Platteville our home afterwards. Raised our kids here. Have a lot of respect for all the people in Platteville who come forward whenever anything is asked of you. And I guess, again, the volunteering that I do at this point in my life is the council. For those of you who don't know, yes, we serve on the council, and I'm talking now about the whole council members. We meet twice a month on Tuesday evenings. But each individual council person also is asked to serve on 4 or 5 other committees. And those committees usually meet once a month. So it is a time commitment. And so anyone who's decided to run for council, I think it's great. You've obviously decided you value that as well. As far as the budget goes, obviously the budget is always going to be an ongoing issue. I will say that I would prefer that more local control was given to elected officials. The state has instituted things like levy limits, and so sometimes, even though we would like to do something, we are not able to do it in a way that we feel would actually be best for the community. We have to adhere to the state rules. I realize the state has their own concerns. Infrastructure is a big one, and it's affecting us as well. So I agree with some of the comments that I've made before. I think Mr. Kramer deserves credit for deciding to run because, as I say, it's a big decision, and that's why I ran originally and why I continue to run.
Okay, Bill.
This has been on my mind for a while. For the last 3 or 4 months, I've had people saying, Bill, you need to run. You need to run. I don't want to run. I can't afford the time commitment because I knew what it involved. And when it came, I'm on the Commission on Aging, and I'm very active in the Platteville Senior Center. I've been, I have worked at the Mining Museum and the Jameson Museum. I'm past president of the Platteville Library Board of Trustees. And after the cuts, especially to the senior center, I decided, yeah, I would run as a write-in candidate. I've been involved in politics to a limited degree for a long time, but not usually local politics. So it's not been an easy decision. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm not real well informed on the particular issues facing the city, but I'll if elected, I will find out. I will learn what I need to learn. That's why I'm running.
Okay, that completes the first question. It's time for the second question now, which is, what do you believe is the most important issue in this campaign, and what is your position on it? And we'll start with Deb.
Well, I believe that the most complex problems we have in the city is our operating budget. That we need to really take a look at that operating budget. In November, as a commission, I was on the member of the Commission on Aging. It was brought to my attention about some of the cuts on the Senior Citizen Center. So I looked at the budget. I talked to some of the seniors about it. It's also about some of the fees that are going to be charged and how it will affect our seniors and our population in general. And I looked at that budget, and it didn't take me too long to see that there's some fat in that budget. So what I did is I made a presentation to the council before they voted about that I found $9,650 that we could easily cut out of that budget. There's other ways that you can look at an operating budget. There's other ways that you can look at grants for different activities we have that could cut our costs. There's ways in which we can, as I talked to the city manager, about doing a time study. When I worked for Charms Corporation and Johnson & Johnson way back when, okay, I did time studies. Well, she said, we don't have money for that. Well, I know how to do that. And I told her some ways and some tricks how you can do that. Because in a time study, you can actually take a look at the budget, take a look at some of our outsourcing, take a look whether it's necessary or not to keep one particular department and outsource at the same time. Do we need both of them? Do we need them to work together? Do we need to cut some of our budget by having it done in-house rather than outsourcing? Have we taken a look at our contracts? Have we gone out and bidded again? And when was the last time we bidded on some of these contracts? And if someone that we have a service in the town and they have a monopoly on it, have we negotiated with them? I negotiated many contracts. I would love to negotiate some or be part of it. These are some of the things that we need to take a look. I think our operating budget is our biggest concern that we have. The second biggest concern, of course, is our development. We need to develop more economic development in the country, in this particular city. But when you do that, there is certain laws and guidelines. And when I looked at some of the projects that we have, I have concern. I have some grave concern. Now, it was mentioned, Barbara was talking about the library block. Well, when I sat in a meeting with the city and with members of the council, they said it was only going to be $1 a year for 7 years for that library. And now we're paying $18,333 a month. Well, how did we get there? I'm sure that there are some stakeholders that pulled out, some contracts that weren't fulfilled, that maybe the council didn't have any choices. But what I think I can bring to the council is I love to research. And when I did that, I found one of the laws, 66.102, all right? And in that law, it says that we are to have a joint review board when we do these big economic projects, which are great, by the way, for the city. But the council needs to sit down with these joint review boards and say, okay, where are the reports? Where's the opportunity cost? What's the service cost? How will it impact our schools? How will it impact our roads? How will it impact us? I don't see those reports, and that's a grave concern to me as well. And I think if I'm a member of the council, I can be very loud and I can be very proud to serve you and say to you right now tonight that I intend to make sure that if we do other future projects, that we will have a joint review board and the reports will be made public and we have more public input into it. So these are the things that I feel are important. Thank you.
Okay, Eileen.
Well, again, I guess I'm going to play off a little bit of what the other comments have been. The budget isn't, as we both agree, is an ongoing discussion. I sat through Deb's presentation when she did go through the budget line by line and did offer around $9,000 or $10,000 that she suggested could be allocated, in this case, to the senior center, because the council, and after much deliberation, had made the decisions that we made about reductions to certain departments in the city. I will say that we, at our last council meeting, just carried over some funds, and it was about $7,000. So while it may appear from a first look that that money is available, in many cases, it's money that was allocated, could not be spent for one reason or another in the current year, and it was carried over to the next year. That allowed us then to continue to do the projects that we had planned for in that year. It doesn't always happen, but it does happen sometimes. I'm not sure about the joint review board. Maybe for a TIF district, in order to create a TIF district, you do have to always have a joint review board, and that was certainly done. As far as the budget itself, the operating budget is the most difficult. The way that we get funding for the operating budget is through the tax dollars that the citizens of Platteville pay. About 3 years ago, we did allocate some funds in that budget for specifically a grant writer so that we could go out and look for grants to help fund some of the things that the city had been paying for, the citizens had been paying for up to that point. We have been successful in getting some of those grants. It's extremely difficult. If any of you have ever written grants, you know it's extremely difficult to write a grant that will allow you to pay for operations. Most often those grants pay for new exhibits, let's say at a museum, or a new event that's happening in your community. So we are trying to always look at alternative sources of funding. One of the things that council members do is go to the legislative day that the League of Wisconsin Municipalities has every year to advocate with our legislators for more money to come back to rural communities. Infrastructure is a prime example. I read an article recently where a community in northern Wisconsin is thinking about changing their blacktop roads into gravel because the amount of money that they're receiving through the state for infrastructure programs has gone down. Everyone knows that the state is struggling with money for infrastructure. It's affecting us here as well. So there are a lot of different pots of money that we could look at. It doesn't always mean we're successful in getting them. Doesn't mean we don't try. We definitely are aware of the fact that the citizens of Platteville would rather not have their taxes increase. With the levy limits that we have, one of the things that the state has said is that municipalities may assess fees. When some municipalities, including us, assess some of those fees, we then got word from the state the next time that we had to reduce the tax rate by that much. So that, again, then, did not allow a new revenue source. Again, I pay the same fees and taxes that all of you pay. So I'm not eager to increase my tax or fees. The wheel tax is a prime example. I think it would have made much more sense for the state to institute a wheel tax statewide. And the money could have been assessed for everyone. They've chosen not to do that. We, as a city, did it. We voted to have that wheel tax. That money can only go for transportation issues, and so that money will go to fix our streets. Because the cost of fixing streets has gone up, our revenue sources have not kept pace. So I would say infrastructure is one big issue. The other one to me personally, because I am actually a retired realtor at this point, but I see a lot of need for single-family homes. Unfortunately, the federal and state money that's available is not for single-family home building, it's for building apartment complexes. So we look at that. And we know that there are people that want to live in an apartment, not student housing, but a nice apartment when they first get that job. They may not be here more than a year or 2 years, maybe all they can afford. But at least we need to have that available so that people who want to live in Platteville can live in Platteville. The whole single-family housing thing, we've discussed with the school district and the university, and that's something that I think we need to work on.
Okay, Bill.
Okay, the question again was, what's the
What's-
most important issue?
Yes.
There are several. The one that made me decide to run was primarily the senior citizens, or senior center, but that's not the only concern I have. It's also funding for the museums, funding for Platteville history, the library, even though everybody thinks we've overspent, which possibly we have, I don't know. Those are my interests. I run a Facebook page called Things of Interest in Platteville, Wisconsin, and I run another one called Historic Platteville Images. I'm not originally from Platteville, but I have always loved the history of this community. We have, saving the Gates Hotel is one of my concerns. Saving the museum is a concern. Saving the Roundtree Gallery is a concern. Saving the senior center is a concern. And I do understand about operating budgets. As a member of the Commission on Aging, we appointed a task force to study a 5-year plan. The task force, and I was appointed to that committee. The task force then committed, or created a subcommittee which worked to develop a 5-year plan, and we have completed that now. Part of that 5-year plan, and we don't know for sure if it's going to come true yet, but part of that 5-year plan is not to take this as a hit, but make it a offer to make a better thing out of the senior center. We want to create a community center, a multi-generational community center. And we're looking, as most of you know, at OE Gray. And we really appreciate the commitment that we've gotten so far from the school board and from the superintendent. I think the decision is on Monday, is that correct, Connie? Okay, that's what I thought. But as far as important issues, those are my important issues. And that's all I have.
Okay. Barb.
Originally, when I chose to run, the two things were streets and staff. Because at the time, staff were working 4-day weeks, and because the budget issues before that, there was questions on staffing. What we were able to do through looking at the budget was changing the staffing to 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, and therefore we have a traditional city hall open now that wasn't there before. They were, I think it was 3 years, they were financed under the different streets. Streets was a big issue at the time. Plowing snow was a big issue at the time. Potholes was a big issue at the time. And since then, we have, I feel, a really good plan. Now, as was mentioned by Eileen, streets are expensive. And financing streets, I don't know, every year it's a unique experience. Obviously, sewer and water division pays some of the expense, but some of the expense has to come from other areas of the budget. Or we don't have all the streets paved that everybody wants. In fact, at the last council meeting, a question was on Main Street. Do we take any extra money and repair Pine Street, pardon me, going east of Water Street? Most of you know that's a difficult street, but do we need it paved now, or do we do the other streets that are on the list? That was a question. The library, I know we mentioned the library. Well, if anybody has spent hours at our current library, they will know that the building itself is in poor shape. It's too small, and it has some roof problems and some building structure problems. It was time in a community such as ours to look at a new library. In order to do that, we had to find financing. Along came a developer who said, well, I can match some of the development needs with a hotel. It worked out. I think overall in the 10 years it's going to take to pay our fair share, we are going to be happy people. A beautiful building, a beautiful library. I think that's important. The other, as far as financing, we all know, and every one of you know, that the Pioneer Ford property is not what we want our new residents to look at when they drive into town. The city bought that property. They worked and negotiated very hard to find the property at the price tag we could afford. And this was at the time I was still on the council. Now we did find a developer. Now the negotiating starts to see how we can negotiate an opportunity to make that piece of property presentable, to finance itself, to do what buying a piece of property is supposed to do. I think all of you will be happy once it's built, once it's used. Another issue in this town is the word parking. I know for a fact that students park on my street and walk to the university and then walk back to move their car because they don't want to pay for parking, which I find kind of interesting because then they run. But we have a parking committee. Every year we're going to have conversations on parking. It'll never go away. And the reason I say that is because I have a small parking lot, and I was approached, every year I get approached for students to park in my parking lot. That is one thing. It was mentioned about the senior center. I really appreciate the fact you're looking at some other alternatives for not only funding, but location. I think that is a good use of our properties in town, and certainly to work jointly with the school district. I really appreciate that very much. I was on the a museum committee, the gallery committee. I worked with them for 3 years to come up with our beginning plans. I was on the Jameson Museum Trust Fund, our trust board, which I don't know if anybody knows, but the Rollo Jameson Collections is actually a trust. So it has to follow the trust law that it was developed under before you can move any of those collections. Well, it's difficult to work through the trust to move collections. You can go into the mining part of our collections and maybe go through the mining area, but working through the trust is a little bit more demanding for our director. Grants, it's a difficult thing. They need the committees, find the grants, you need the help to write the grants. Our grant writer she's excellent grant writer. As you all know, look around. She has funded numerous projects in this town. I was mentioned by my opponent about economic development. We have 3 or 4 commissions in this town to help with economic development. There are companies out in the industrial park that I don't know if any of you know, but they're actually hiring people full-time with benefits. And that's important. We have jobs in this town for people with benefits. And that to me is one of the major things that all of us bring to this community. Housing, I was very, what do I say? Was very supportive and encouraged about the housing development north of the pool. That is so important to us. It brings families, it brings students, and it's close to the schools. I was really encouraged by that development. So anyway, my goal here is to help further with the improvements we bring to this community and continue to improve what we have to our community. And as was mentioned, this job takes 25 to 35 minimum hours a month to do, reading the materials, going to meetings, constantly encouraging people to be involved. You know, there's an opening on a committee, come and do it. Like you were encouraged to be on the committee. You were encouraged. I think that's a real important part of the rest of our job, that our potential council members. So, thank you.
Okay. All right, the next two questions have to do with the current budget and the next budget as well, the 2018 budget. The first of the two questions is that the city's 2017 budget cut funding for the senior center, the Roundtree Gallery, and the museums, and further cuts in all of those areas are projected for 2018. Do you agree with the decision to cut funding in those areas or not? And if you do not, how should those services be funded? And we'll start with Eileen.
As I said earlier, it was a difficult decision for this council to make. It was a unanimous decision, and like other people on the council, I have been the council liaison to the museum, to the senior center, to the Roundtree Gallery. They're near and dear to my heart. I think that one of the challenges that we all face is the primary focus of any council is on fire, EMS, police, and infrastructure. Those are the things that a government can do that individuals cannot do. Museums are wonderful. I go to the museum all the time. I like the Lyceum programs in particular that they do. I did the Haunted Halloween in the mine. It was great. But if you look at the other costs to run the city, then you have to look at every department and say, is there another way to fund some of these other departments? I think that the Commission on Aging should be commended because they have taken this difficult task and they have approached it in a positive way, and they are coming up with solutions to a reduction in funding. Roundtree Gallery, unfortunately, we, as a council, decided to remove all that funding. That was very painful. But that gallery has a Friends of the Gallery organization, and they are going to go forward and continue as the gallery and actually have exhibits. So we have wonderful volunteers who are doing that. We have wonderful volunteers at the senior center who are taking on the task. The museum is a very difficult one. That budget is the largest of the three. We know that one individual will be retiring, and so we'll be down to 2 full-time people in that museum. Again, I don't think that's optimum, but I'm hoping that looking at grants, which is what the Jameson Museum Association, which is now called, I think, the Jameson and Mining Association. Again, we have a dedicated group of people who have said, we believe in this museum. If the city can continue to fund at least a portion of it, we will go forward and we will do our very best to replace the funding that the city no longer allocates. Again, the same can be said with the senior center and with Roundtree Gallery. So while I think it's unfortunate that the council had to make the decision that they did make because of the financing that we're permitted to raise, I think that the challenge has been met really, really well by the people in Platteville. And so all of you who would like to help support the museum or the senior center or the gallery, I'm sure they would appreciate your time and also your dollars if you want to contribute in that way. But I do think that if you look at a city budget and you see a reduction in some area, I don't believe that means that the council doesn't value or that the city staff doesn't value those areas. It very simply means that sometimes you have to make really difficult choices. There's certain things that you cannot not fund. And unfortunately, that then means you look at other things that could be funded perhaps in another way, and that's a decision we had to make.
Okay, Bill.
Well, first of all, no, I don't approve of the budget cuts that were made. Nothing I can do about it. But I can only speak as a member of the Commission on Aging and tell you what the senior center is moving forward to do. As I've said, we've developed a 5-year plan, which we are going to be, well, we've already presented it to the city manager. We will be presenting it to the council as soon as, well, the Commission on Aging has to approve the 5-year plan that we've come up with first. The $10,000 cut for this year, we think we can make up with contributions that are coming in already. The $30,000 for next year, that's a different story. We'll see. We are developing a 501c3 organization. I think we're going to call it PASS, Platteville Area Senior Services. And we're hoping then to approach the township and maybe surrounding townships for a little funding also. Because there again, operating budgets are not things that usually are eligible for grant money. On the other hand, if we partner with the school district, there may be some grants that we can apply for that we otherwise couldn't. As Head Start is already there, Southwest Tech is already there, and what's the other organization? Wisconsin Forward, yeah. If we try to develop a multi-generational community center, I think we might have, with all of this working together, I think we have some good chances for grants that normally would not be received. But this is going to take time. One of the things we're going to ask the city council is that maybe next year's $30,000 proposed budget cut can be spread out over 2 years to give us time to raise this money. We don't know, but we're working hard at it. I have put in probably 20 hours a week at this. It's no small task.
Okay, Barb?
Budget. Anyone who has run or operated or bought a business knows that budget is always going to be your first word. You're constantly looking at what money's coming in and what money's going out, what your staff needs are, what your client needs have. I appreciate hearing all the work that you've done over many years. I've been in this community a long time, been involved in a lot of organizations. Every organization, as was mentioned, does the same thing. What are we going to do with our projects? How are we going to fundraise? That's the thing that our budget looking at every day. Recently, the city council looked at sheets and sheets and sheets of numbers that talked about our debt service, talked about where our money is going, what's going to be happening in the next 3 to 5 years. So I feel the council is studying our budget every time they meet. You probably opened up some of the eyes that needed to consider this project. Not that we don't. That budget is looked at every single council meeting. Every single council member gets the worksheets. But it's going to be a challenge. Word went out. Council members are going to have to look at continuous changes. I think, like Eileen said, though I didn't even think about it in those terms, fire, EMS, infrastructure, and police. Well, police was addressed years ago by having a new police building. EMS, 3 years ago, our EMS changed. I don't know if you knew that, but the equipment was moved to the hospital. We now have a vacant EMS building, and part of that land will be sold, and the other part will be put into storage. So we are using every single facility we can. Fire department, we still had the building at the location. There was talk of moving it, but we still knew that that was the best location. So we look, or I should say the council looks, at every single opportunity that's out there to stretch our dollar, to work with the other organizations in our community. What's on those tax bills that you all get? It's not just city, there are other entities, so you're constantly looking at how that's gonna affect our city members. And that's gonna be a challenge this next year. When you look at the county, you look at the townships, you look at the school board, you look at Southwest Tech, you look at the city, those are on your bill, and they shift. 4 years ago, they had to put the garbage collection bill on there. People didn't like it, but we needed it in order to have garbage collection. I don't know if you even noticed that, but there's a $60 bill on there. And I looked in our budget, and it's $80 a year for these added fees that we simply have to have paid. $80. I don't know if you'll even notice that on your bill next year. It's always amazing to me, but some people don't. But one other thing we have in Platteville, and we're very fortunate so far, is we don't have the problem, not yet anyway, I have to hope this doesn't, what Dodgeville went through about 10 years ago. The average property tax bill runs about $5,000 in that small community for a simple house. So we are fortunate that so far we've been able to work hard. The council has worked hard at looking at our budget and kept it within line of our community. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, Deb.
Let me just educate you, if those of you sitting out there and on TV land, that last year the council cut $10,000 out of the Senior Citizen Center, and they also cut a substantial amount out of the museum. And as a result, the Roundtree Gallery was closed. We have lost a valuable asset, I think. And what's sad about it is when you close things like that, you don't get them back. Unless you have really dedicated people that are gonna come in and get that service back. Now, we lost $10,000 in the Senior Citizen Center. I'm more familiar with that because I sit on the Commission on Aging. And I also sit on the task force. And when it was brought to our attention, we took a look at it. We were devastated, of course. We lost some hours. We were really concerned about losing the three very part-time, no benefit people that are dedicated to us, or to the Senior Citizen Center. And then when we looked at the 2018 budget, and they said, well, it's another $30,000. So if you have $30,000, $40,000, the entire budget is $82,000. So now you got 50% cut, which means to some of the seniors there, they were devastated, which means basically it'd close because you'd only be open just a few days a week. I don't know if you know this or not, but 21,000 of Meals on Wheels go out of that Senior Citizen Center every year. 72,000 goes out in the entire county. So we have a huge percentage. A lot of our seniors depend on it. The council had put out a news bulletin last week in the paper, which I was shocked to read, that even the transportation is might be on the chopping block. When you do these things, you don't get them back. When you close a service, you don't get them back. And that's why I go back to when I first spoke to you, is that a budget is a moral document, and we have to take a look at it. So we did. So on the task force, I sat on that, and we looked at the budget. We our 82,000 meager budget that we had, and what can we do to sustain it? So especially if we get cut $30,000. So we looked around and we looked at different things. Bill was very instrumental in going to Monroe and taking a look at their senior citizen center. He was also sat in on the 5-year plan and so on. And we've come up with some ways, we have. But we do need the city to continue to sustain some part of that budget. We feel it is their moral obligation. I feel it's their moral obligation. I hope you feel the same way too. Because one of the things I'm devastated if we're going to lose that council. I mean, I was born and raised in Platteville. I went to school here. Although I did my 2 other careers in another state, I came back here in 2011 because I bought a house here. I intended to retire here. I don't work anymore. I'm retired. And maybe I have too much time on my hands. I don't know. My brothers seem to tell me that. But I definitely am concerned about what's going on with the operating budget. And yes, when I looked at it, and I've looked at many, many budgets. I've looked at many town budgets. I've looked at state budgets. I've gone to lobby many times in the state legislature and the eastern state I lived in. I did that many times. So I know a lot about budgets. I feel that this budget, that we can do a lot of things, and I mentioned a few of the things to you that we need to look at. We need to look at our outsourcing. We need to look at our employees. We need to say, you know what, that department has 15 employees. Can they get away with 14? Maybe some of them has to be part-time. What do we need to do within this operating budget? Now, the how, of course, is for the Senior Citizen Center. We're looking at various ways to relocate it. We can save about $3,000 if we relocate it right off the top of the budget. But we also looking at grants. We're all looking at getting a 501c3 up and running. But it's going to take time. You cannot do things like overnight. And the council has to realize that. And they have to make some moral decisions about it, because that $30,000 is going to devastate. And also with the museum, it's going to devastate. If we lose it, we're not going to get it back. And if we do, won't be for a very long, long time. So I'm running, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe that if you put someone like me on the council, I can think of out-of-the-box ways, and I've talked to the city manager about it, about ways in which we can reduce this budget still, about ways about getting grants. And Eileen had mentioned that she's gone up to Madison and things haven't changed. Well, you know what? You get in the car, you drive up there, and you start saying, we need assistance. We need to talk to our state legislators. We need to tell them that we need it. And we need to get other communities involved. We need to talk to other council people in the area. We need to say to Lancaster and Dickeyville and Cuba City and all the places in Grant, we need to get together. And we need to fight. We need to fight for change. We need to fight for what's going on in Madison. We need to fight for our community. And I think that I am the person that could sit on this council and do that. Maybe, like I said, I got too much time on my hands. But I'm darn sure that I do not want to see this council, whether I'm voted in or not. I'm going to be one of these people that's going to be loud because I think it's important to the city. All right, thank you.
Okay. Question number 2 on the budget. Well, it is question number 2. There may be another one later, but the second part of the question is that the city's 2017 budget also increased property taxes and instituted a wheel tax for vehicles registered in the city and assessed a fee on water bills to pay for Southwest Health EMS, the city's annual payment for that. Do you agree with the decision on the city revenue increases or not? And if you do not, how should the city fund those services? We'll start with Bill this time.
Gee, you picked me for the hardest question. No, I don't agree with them, but I realized that things had to be done. Even though for me it only cost me $1.45 a month, why should I have to pay for ambulance services when I'm covered by Medicare? Doesn't make sense to me. Is the property tax increase going to raise my rent? Very well may. The wheel tax, I don't own a vehicle, so I don't care. But I'm thinking there's probably more wear and tear on our roads and city streets from college students who aren't registered, whose vehicles are not registered in Platteville. Isn't there a way to charge them a fee? That's just my feeling.
Okay, Barb.
Well, to do new roads, the wheel tax was really one of the only options that the state allowed us to do. Other than increasing water and sewer bill and taking more money, as I've mentioned before, the wheel tax allows us to generate some new revenue that wasn't there before. And it's for overlays. It doesn't even really build the road, it just puts a sealant on it. And there are some roads in this town that are designated for overlays. And that extends the road for maybe 10 years. So that money will be very well used. The ambulance fee, all of us need an ambulance at one time or another. We simply will. I had an experience talking with one of my clients this morning. He was up at Dairy Days. He was setting up a tent. Fell over. He was right in the middle of a heart attack. If his friends didn't know what to do and get the ambulance there, he might not have made it, and that was at Dairy Days. So that ambulance and how it's going to be paid, and at that time we owned the ambulances, would have been difficult, very difficult. And that was by volunteer providers. It was time for us to either build a new building for our ambulance service or move the ambulances to a location that had full-time services, medical services. And I think that when our council, and I was on the council at the time, provided the best service. Like I said, it was either remodel a whole new building or move the ambulance service. And the building was over 40 years old, and as I like to say, it was just being held up by caulking. It was not a very good building anymore. And so we had to make a choice. Do we want to build a new building, or do we find a very friendly area for our ambulances and the services they provide? These are part of doing business. It's part of our community of supporting each other. It is good common sense to study every dollar, and those of you that have, it is a challenge. And I was looking at all this material this morning. One of the hardest things, as I've mentioned before, is balancing that budget, and it's going to continue to be a challenge. There's no way around it. The museum is also dear to my heart. I was very fortunate to be appointed to the museum board when I first was on the council. And our new director put together a very comprehensive plan, which all of you can get online if you want to. And now I heard that the senior center is doing the same thing, the library's done the same thing. All of this is available. I feel very strongly that we are going in the direction of positive as far as our various expenses and innovative way of financing. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, Deb.
As far as the increase in property tax, and also you mentioned, Stephen, the wheel tax. Wheel tax, I feel, is terribly unfair. I feel it's very unfair. I was at the Senior Citizen Center a couple weeks ago, and an older lady came up to me and she said, she says, it's only $20 for the wheel tax, and she knows that the city needs it, but she said, I have to make some choices. Do I pay for medication, or do I pay for the increase for the registration? Which, by the way, we get $17 back from the state, not $20, just to be aware of that. So I think what we have to look at the budget is that we have to do more with less. I don't know if that's been around here. I don't know if other people have talked to you about it, but I think we can do more with less dollars that we have. And I think that's important. As far as the increased property tax, I haven't looked at the budget on that, but I do know that the wheel tax generates about $100,000. It is used. We do have city streets that need repair. It is important, but it's terribly unfair to ask just the citizens of this town that own property and live in this town to pay to register their car, without asking the other 6,000 or 7,000 people that live in this town, that they live in Iowa and Illinois. They're only here 10 months out of the year. They rent homes here, but they don't register the car here. So basically, that wheel tax is, of course, falls upon the citizens. Can we look at other ways? I don't know. That's something I haven't investigated, but I definitely am going to look into it on that. Eileen had mentioned that we should only have fire, police, infrastructure, and EMS. Well, in a budget, when it's a moral budget, you also need the pool for kids. You need recreation for children. We need a senior citizen center. We need a museum, okay? We need to protect the legacy of this town, but we have to learn to do more with less. And we have to be creative in the budget. Thank you.
Eileen.
Just in response to your comment, Deb, I hope I didn't misspeak. I didn't mean that we shouldn't have recreation, senior center, museum, Roundtree Gallery, and other cultural activities. I'm saying that as a council person, I feel that the first thing I have to look at to fund are the items that a city needs to operate. And fire, EMS, police, and infrastructure, and water and sewer are the items that make a community a safe environment, someplace that you want to live. So I really feel that all the other things are equally important. I hope that the seniors believe that the council does not intend to remove the other $40,000 from the budget. I think Bill's question about could it be 15 and 15, I think that can be looked at budget time again. So I think these are all really valid questions that, regardless of who's serving on the council, those are the questions that you're going to have to look at every time you look at the budget. So I think that the question about fees, the wheel tax, I agree with you 100%. I don't think the wheel tax is fair at all. Unfortunately, state law says that you can only assess the wheel tax in your community on the vehicles that are registered in your community. I think a more fair way would be that if you live in the community, if your address is in the community, you should be able to tax that, the wheel tax. Again, the state law does not allow us to do that, so as a way to fund some more infrastructure, we did decide that the wheel tax would be then used and must be used for our streets. As far as budget, looking at the budget and saying how lean can we make it, I think that we all do that as well. we probably have different priorities. Would like to fund some things and as council members, maybe not others. But if you look at the budget, you're going to see that we are reducing city staff by 3 people. That was part of what we looked at during our last budget session. So we are trying to address our financial situation in a way that still provides the services that I think honestly the citizens of Platteville have come to expect and deserve. But to say that we can always finance a department in the same way, I don't think is realistic. And I think that that is the struggle that a council faces every time you do a budget. And that's what we're trying to do. So as far as the ambulance service is concerned, we were seeing an increase in ambulance calls every year. We had been in discussion for probably 5, maybe 10 years about the need for a new ambulance building. We knew that we were very fortunate because we had so many college students who volunteered to be EMTs. Unlike some of our surrounding communities that have a real struggle to find people who, even if they're an EMT, if they don't work in that community, they're not available during the day. So we were very fortunate, and we still have college students who volunteer. They have to be trained though, and the amount of hours of training has gone up dramatically. And so it is a time commitment on anybody who decides to volunteer, the same way with the fire department. So all those things were coming together. And if we were to build an ambulance building, I mean, the fees, the taxes, however it was going to be paid for had to happen. So whether it got built in the location where the ambulance garage is or was, or whether we partnered with the hospital became the question. I personally think partnering with the hospital was a very good idea, and part of the reason is that they are committed to going to the paramedic level. If you do have a heart attack, like Barb talked about, and you would need a transfer to Madison or Dubuque, and you needed to have paramedic level personnel on that ambulance, you would have to wait for an ambulance to come from Dubuque, which could be a 20-minute ride, or you could wait for an ambulance to come from Madison, which could take an hour, because we did not at that time, we will have soon, the paramedic level here. So I think it was an upgrade. I think that's what the citizens of Platteville can appreciate. If it's your loved one and you need a transfer, you really don't want to wait that 20 minutes for that ambulance to get here. So is $1.45, as Bill said, something that I'd rather not pay? I guess that's probably one I'm more than happy to pay, because I think that having good medical service available to us when we need it is really important. And I will say, with all the things that are happening at the federal level with the Affordable Care Act, whether it's repealed or not repealed, whether you like it or don't like it, the changing medical field really, I think, is better handled by the medical profession, which in this case is Southwest Health. And so I think that having an ambulance service available through the hospital is a plus for the city.
Okay. The next couple questions have to do with another hot topic in Platteville, and that is development. So the general question first is the city adequately promoting business development, economic development, and development specifically downtown and in the industrial park and in the TIF districts? And if not, what should be changed? And this question starts with Bill.
Well, I was just reflecting on the school board meeting that I went to last week. And I think one of the big problems in Platteville, which is part of the school district's problem, is that we don't have enough single-family homes. And as Eileen mentioned, there's no government, or very little government funding for it. I think that should be a focus of development. That should be focused on, and developing, creating jobs in the community for younger people. And I don't know how you go about that. But that's, I think, where our attention should be. If we had those things, there'd be more revenue. There'd be fewer cuts.
Okay, Eileen.
I like that short answer. I think he's hit the nail on the head. We absolutely need more single-family homes. I think honestly, the 2008 economic crash, or whatever you want to call it, had a very negative impact in a community our size on the building of single-family homes, because contractors take a risk if they build a house and then a spec house, and then hold it. That costs them money. And in our community our size, you're not going to see a contractor come in and build 20 homes and expect that they will be sold even within probably, I don't know how many years. I think Lancaster had 26 lots, and it took 3 years to sell 26 lots. So it's a very difficult question. I do think that there are answers, but we haven't put together a plan yet. If I'm reelected, I would like to have the city, the school board, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, bankers, realtors, contractors, developers. I would like to bring them all in a room and say, okay, we know this is a concern. What can you bring to the table that will encourage the development of single-family homes? You know, as a bank, is there some way that maybe some closing costs, some of those costs can be defrayed? We are somewhat limited, again, as a city. About 10 years ago, the city invested $600,000 in housing. It was, in my view, very successful. If you go above the Super 8, the second set of homes that were built back in there, that's the result of that investment. At the same time that was being done, the investment was made in the properties behind the high school. You have a combination of single-family duplexes and apartment complexes and condos. So that all came about as a result of the city council's decision to invest $600,000. There isn't $600,000 in our current economic situation to invest. So I think it has to be a joint effort within the community. And I think everybody that I just mentioned, and anybody else who wanted to come to that meeting and be an open meeting, but I think that we need to have a combination of public-private investment in our community to address the issue of single-family homes. Maybe you build them and you rent them for the first year or 2 years, and it's on like a land contract. I don't know. But I do think that's something that I definitely want to continue to look at. As I mentioned earlier, the funding is available for large building apartments. I think in many ways we're fortunate as a city our size to attract developers who want to come and build in Platteville, because I know Cuba City and Lancaster have just been in the paper recently. They're struggling, as we are, to try to figure out a way to build housing. The other option is to rehabilitate housing that we have. So if you build the new apartments, like the pool apartments, people may decide to move into that apartment. Maybe they're in a house now and they're gonna move into that apartment. That makes that house available. If we can figure out a way for a buyer, if it's, 50 years old, hasn't been updated, if we can figure out some assistance for that buyer to update that house, new windows, new roof, whatever, that would definitely be a plus. So that's one element of economic development. That brings people into Platteville, because in case you haven't noticed, I'm not as young as I used to be, and we need to replace people like me. I'm not gonna be here forever. So we need to constantly recruit, retain the people who move to our community, who want to stay here, and need to find a nice place to reside in while they are living here. And some of them will want to rent at first, because they don't know if that job's gonna work out or if that job's gonna last for more than a year. So again, we need to have housing that's available to rent the first year, 2 years, whatever, until they, really get the roots down and decide that this is where they wanna stay. The Platteville Industrial Park, we've had, I believe, good success in recruiting businesses. There's some space out there. The city recently invested in 39 acres, which is across the street kind of from where Kmart used to be. the city received an $800,000 grant from the EDA to help fund the infrastructure in that particular development. We know from talking to many, many economic development people that advise us that having land available is a critical thing, because when a company wants to build, they don't want to wait to see if you can find some land for them. They want it ready. And that decision was made by the council to invest in that property. So as far as, you know, the downtown is more challenging. The storefronts are what they are. It's difficult to enlarge them. In many cases, you don't want to enlarge them because of the historic nature of them. So you look at the spots that are available downtown, like the Pioneer Ford site, and you say, okay, what could be built there? And you will recall, I hope, that we actually did a visioning night on what would the community like to see in that location. And the consensus was something that is going to bring in some tax, which it will, something that would bring people downtown. It's housing, so people will be living right downtown. Some retail if possible, there will be some retail. So I think that we met the criteria that the people that came to that meeting told us was most important, something that was nice to look at when you drove up on that corner. So I just think there are a lot of things about economic development. It's not one neat sort of little package. A lot of things just all have to come together to really get a business to decide to locate here. But I'm hoping that we can continue to have the success we had. We've been successful in some new projects, and it can be sometimes very slow going.
Okay, Deb.
Economic development, I feel, if you have high-paying jobs, I think that the housing will follow. I think if you have people in the industrial park, if we can get that industrial park up and running and we get more businesses there with high-paying jobs, we can work on the housing, because people then can afford to build their own home, or they can afford to pay the higher rent in some of the different economic projects that we got going here. There's also in that, with that, there's WIDA that you did not mention, but I'm sure that the city is working on, where we can help families with their rent here in the city. Is there any funding left? I don't know, but that's a possibility. As far as Main Street is concerned, I think that the city should look at Main Street, some of the empty buildings, and talk to the landlords. I know sometimes some of them wanted higher rents. Can we subsidize some of those rents? Can we actually look at the property? Can we get a business in there? Can we get that high-paying job in there? What can we do to help more economic development in the city? I think that's one of the big things. I agree with Bill and Eileen that, of course, we need more housing here in the city. But you have to have people be able to afford it as well. So we have to think about how we could do that. And I think that's a great idea, to bring the people together, maybe the people that rent homes, or the people that would like to invest in homes, and the industrial development as well. Bring them all together. How can we resolve this issue? I think that's one of the things that we need to think about, especially with the land that we have now, apparently, and a way in which we can get the infrastructure to that. I think that's great. But we also have other issues, like, for example, we have the Kmart property that we just lost. It went out of business. That's $95,000 in property taxes. We have 20 jobs that just left Platteville. So we've got to think about, what are we going to do about that property? In the industrial park, we have an empty building in the industrial park. It's owned by a corporation in another state. Have we called them? Why aren't they selling it? Why aren't we doing anything with that? Can we put any pressure on them to get another business in that particular building? I don't know the answer to that. But I can say that as a council person, I definitely have a grave concern about not having as many high-paying jobs as we should have in this town, to therefore bring more families into town, and then work with our lower-income families. The retail space that we have going up for the Pioneer property, I think that's exciting. I hope that the council has vetted it to make sure that they're not just minimum wage jobs. Will the retail going into that space, will they provide good paying jobs? They can afford to live in the building. I pray that they have done that. But that's an important issue that the council needs to look at. Thank you.
Okay, Barb.
I have so many notes here. Number one, I'm on the board for the Main Street program, and I can guarantee you that Jack has spent hours doing everything you mentioned. We have vacancies on Main Street for a lot of reasons. Not all businesses can make it to that 5-year mark. Most are self-owned and self-operated, and the staff they hire are usually part-time. My daughter works as part-time for one of the major companies on Main Street. It's called Badger Brothers. She's been there 5 years. What does she? She's a barista. She does all the bean work that none of you like when she roasts the beans. But that's her job. She said she finally can use her biology degree from UW Platteville because she weighs and measures and does all the important things that you need to roast beans. That's a small business that has grown there and been there 20 years. That is an important part of Main Street, by the way. All of you go there at least once to buy your coffee, sit at the computers, or you bring your computer. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned as part of economic development both is the Chamber of Commerce is an extremely important part of our community. And they are routinely working on bringing business to town, coordinating with all our services, coordinating with businesses. If there's one organization in town that does everything we're talking about and does it on a very minimal budget, it's our chamber. And I've been involved with the chamber for 45 years. I just got I personally have, but our company, I'm the third owner, has been involved in the chamber for 45 years. I can't believe what we've accomplished in 45 years in this town. And that's a major entity that has done everything we've just talked about. The whole concept of being involved in our community, the Main Street projects, the building upgrades, the trail, the new project they want to put on the trail, it's all personally financed. Very few is built on city money. Some of it needs to be city insured, but I talk about single families. One big project Eileen didn't mention, but the Kallenbach properties. There was 22 of them. 3 we had to tear the buildings down because they were in poor shape. The others were all sold for single family housing, and they had to do RFPs to get that property. So it wasn't done on an automatic, you go in and buy the building. And the UW Platteville, I wanted to mention UW Platteville. They are looking for people to do advocating at the state level. They are our major employer. They know where they're a major employer. They know they need to continue to build their business so that everybody else can work. And I think the economic development is part of UW Platteville. The concept of housing is a difficult one in this town because, as you all know, many are rentals. And the city has continued to upgrade our rentals. I mean, we have to maintain good housing for our students. It is difficult when you depend on the students, what they bring for revenue to our community, and realize, okay, we want all these other things done, but the students bring a lot of money to our community. And I really support our students. So Main Street is extremely important. If you have a business for the vacancies, talk to Jack. He's working so hard at it every single day. Museum is really a business on Main Street. So if we continue to support our museum, that is part of our development on Main Street. Recreation is important. I've put a lot of personal money into that trail called the Roundtree Trail. I think that is a major part of our economic development in this community and will bring more and more revenue to this community. And I hope you've all taken advantage of that trail. Dog park. I know most of you don't even know where the dog park is, but I go there every day, and that's a major contributions, all financed by private dollars. So anyway, my point is we do have opportunities for economic development that are used in the support to bring companies to town. We advocate, we have flyers, many parts of our community offices go and do all these things to bring families to town, to work with the families. So at this point, I think we have many good ideas here, and this will be good for our community people to hear what we're looking for, and the input from you to help with our initiatives. And I'm talking about as a city when I say these our initiatives. So, well, thank you.
Okay, then the next development question, it has to do with three major projects that have been approved by the city council in the past 2 years. That's the Library Block Project, the St. Augustine University Parish Housing Project, and the redevelopment of the former Pioneer Ford sales property most recently. The question is, are you satisfied with the decisions that were made with each and the decision-making process for approval of all these projects or not? And what would you have done differently if you're not? And we'll start with Eileen.
Am I satisfied with the process? Yes, I'm satisfied with the process. And I think what I would like to say at this point is that if you are looking for information on decisions that the council is going to be making, that information is available by calling any council member. We'd be happy to talk to you. Our contact information is on the city website. The agendas are posted on the city website as well as in the city hall and the library. We're televised, which is pretty great, so that if you want to entertain yourself on two Tuesday nights a month, you can turn on the television, hopefully if you've got the right cable, and you can watch us debate these issues. Am I satisfied? I'm satisfied that I approached the library block project as a combination of replacing a library that's terribly outdated and also economic development, because the hotel would be built there and that would bring more activity downtown. I think those are both pluses. I still stand by that decision. I think that we debated it over many, many meetings, more meetings than I think we've ever had in any development. And we tried to make the public aware. I don't know if you feel that you were made aware, but we certainly made every effort to bring that information forward before we voted so that you could give us your input. St. Augustine's, I think the location is fine for that kind of apartment complex. I know parking is a concern. I think that, as Barb mentioned earlier, parking is always going to be a concern, and we are going to have to be creative in ways to address that, because we do not want to tear down buildings downtown to put up parking lots. I don't believe that. The Pioneer Ford development, I think that, I've said already, I think it brings us a certain type of apartment building that is in demand, that will be in demand. It's similar to the one by the pool. And if you've not had a chance to actually go through that development, that apartment complex by the swimming pool, I would advocate that you do that. It's really very nice. He is holding periodic open houses, so I think it would be good to have the opportunity yourself to go through it and take a look at it and say, yeah, maybe maybe this would be for me someday. So these were difficult decisions, but I think that what it comes down to is what other people have mentioned, which is that what we're looking at more and more is a public and private partnership to develop things like this. You mentioned the WIDA money. That's exactly the kind of money that is being used in this development. It was used in the one also up by the pool. So again, it's looking for outside sources of revenue to continue to build up our community.
I should have added the pool apartments project to that list. So if you want to address that also.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I did.
Yes. Okay, Deb.
As far as the three projects that you did mention, it does help in economic growth here in Platteville. It does provide housing. The Pioneer Project will. St. Augustine's, apparently that's going to be for students of the Catholic religion or that type of thing. It's a private, I don't know too much about that, quite honestly. I do know that parking is going to be a major issue in that particular area. People are going to be affected by that. As far as the library block is concerned, it's a done deal. It's up. We're going to have a brand new library. It's exciting to have that. But as far as the process is concerned, I am not satisfied. I think any future projects that we have, we really have to take a look at a little bit more of transparency. Let me give you an example. In 66.102 in the state statute, you're supposed to have a joint review board, in which they do have. And there's certain criteria that you have to have for that. But what we didn't look at, or maybe you did, and I've never seen the reports, is that you have to look at the project in total. You have to say, well, how is it going to impact parking? How is it going to impact the surrounding areas? What can we do about it? How can we satisfy our needs versus this beautiful new project that we have? What is the direct cost of the project? What is the cost of the physical labor? How will that impact us? What is the cost of administrating that particular project? Do we have to hire a lawyer? Do we have to have someone with specialty? How much is that going to cost us? What about the consultation that we're going to have? People that come in and consult about the project. That should be a report as well. What about the cost of financing? What about the time it takes Joe Carroll and all the other people that are going to be involved in it? They're going to be taking away from their other activities. What are we going to be doing about that? The service cost in that, the trash cost in that, garbage pickup, the road, the infrastructure, the water, the sewer. How is it going to impact our schools? Okay. We need to ask these questions. What is the opportunity cost in that? The negative costs, the project costs. These are all reports that we should have had with the Joint Review Board that people should have looked at. And if you so choose me as your representative, I believe in transparency. I believe that we should have had results in all of these. I mean, I've been here since 2011 and I didn't see any of these reports. Maybe I wasn't looking, I don't know, but I don't see them. And I believe that even though these projects are great and they bring economic development, that the process needs to change. We have to be a little bit more open, I think, to the taxpayers of Platteville. I believe if I am so choose as a common council person, that's going to be one of my goals, to better communicate on that, about these larger projects that we have. And about, for example, the parking. Now that affected me, like the Roundtree. I live on South Chestnut Street, and I have to put a placard on my car. And when I have visitors and I have more than 2 or 3 people, I have to go to the police station and get other placards, and I have to put them on them so that my visitors don't get a ticket, okay? Or I have to call the police department and say, I'm going to have all these people for Thanksgiving or whatever. Don't be messing with my friends, okay? So we have to see how it impacts, and that was a big deal when that particular building went up. And I assume that we're going to have the same situation when the Pioneer. Now, I don't know what their particular report is on the parking and how it's going to be a problem. I know one council person wanted them to put underground parking, like what they did with the library. And I know he lobbied for that particular thing. Well, we don't have it, it would cost too much and so on. But where are the cars? And then the developer came and said, well, there will only be one car per apartment. And if they want more cars, they're going to have to pay, all right? Well, how is that going to affect the cost of the apartment? How's it going to affect the retail space that we're going to have in the bottom of that particular project? I think the project is a good project, but I think that the process, we need to improve the process. And we need to ask more questions, and we have to get more answers, and we have to share them with you, the taxpayers of Platteville, and see how you feel about it. Because you're the ones going to be impacted. I am too, all right? So these are the things that I'm concerned about. I think the projects are great. However, once again, I am unsatisfied with the process on that.
Okay, Barb.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. Major projects approved by the council the last couple of years, library block, St. Augustine, the apartments at the pool, Pioneer Ford. Are you satisfied with the decision-making process and the decisions that were made or not? And what would you have done differently?
Well, I was involved in the library block, St. Augustine's development, and the project up at the pool. We did give money to the project up at the pool. I do believe it was $250,000. He needed to balance to build it, and we chose to find the cash and give it to him. I made a decision, that was my district at the time, to vote for that. I firmly believe we needed that project to help with our schools, to help with our recreation, to bring families, children. Most of those apartments, they're either one bedroom up to 3 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms usually bring children, and that was really important to me. So, the library took, well, in my 3 years and 2 years before that, numerous meetings about being built and parking and the underground parking. And so I know that we needed and wanted a new library, and once again, you can go online and read all that material. We had meetings early morning Saturdays, late Sunday nights, all to get the financing. The developer would, at the spur of the moment, ask to help. We would help him, he would help us. That's how important that library was to our community. St. Augustine's. Now, we know, anybody that drives past that property knows it's old. It's close to 45 years old. It needs to be upgraded. How do you find a way to upgrade an old church? You need some revenue. The only other way to do it, and it's not Catholic-based, it has to be open to the public by law. And so the apartment will, I think there's 144 beds, is designed only for 2 groups, and that's juniors, well, 3, juniors, seniors, and graduate students by law through the university. And they do have, I think it's 54 spots around the building, and I think it's 25 under the building. And the goal then is to get financing. It'll all be private financed. It will not have city financing except for the monies we have to give the city for services. It obviously will have a new street. Can't connect an old building or a new building without some street reconstruction. So I think St. Augustine's will be a fantastic addition to that part of the university and of the eastern part of the university. Pioneer Ford, when our new city manager came, she did have the visioning session. I really enjoyed it. Quite a number of people were present. We have stuck to that visioning initiative through all these processes, and it's a tough call. What do we use from that plan when we debate these processes that we've been talking to tonight. I want to emphasize about the chamber, I really feel we forget how much work they do. How much work, and their members, there's 425 members of our chamber, all from Southwest Wisconsin and Iowa and Illinois. And they not only bring initiatives, they bring tourism. And so when it comes to, as we've mentioned before, the museum, there's initiative now to build a trail coming from the current trail up to the museum, if nothing else, to use the bathrooms, which I know that sounds unusual to say that, but there might be a need at that point. So there's a lot of processing going on these initiatives you just talked about. And I continue to feel that they're demanding discussions as we do these new building projects. And it is time. It is time to look at upgrades. Thank you.
Okay, Bill.
I was living in Lancaster when the library project was approved. I was aware of it, but I didn't follow it real closely. However, like I said earlier, a past president of the Platteville Library Board of Trustees, we needed a new library 20-odd years ago. I was very in favor of it, as I was in favor of the addition to the Lancaster Library. I have no problem with the library foundation, or with the library project. As far as St. Augustine, I was very disappointed when I saw the Planning Commission's recommendation to the council for more parking. And the council ignored the Planning Commission's suggestion. As far as Pioneer Ford, I don't have a problem with the overall project. I do have a problem with the Gates Hotel. I think it's a very historic building in town, and everything needs to be done to save it.
Okay. There are a lot of other questions that could be asked, but we probably don't want this running until midnight. So we're going to ask 2 more questions and then move on to the school board portion of things. And the next to last question is going to be this. Is there an issue that has not come up tonight or hasn't come up at all during the campaign that you feel strongly about? And if so, what is your position about this issue? And we'll start with Deb.
Well, I feel very strongly about the Senior Citizen Center. That's one of the things I feel very strongly about. I feel very strongly that we need to do more with less. I feel very, very strong that we have to get more high-paying jobs in this city. And then, of course, the following, it would follow that we will have people that can afford actually to buy and build here in Platteville. So I feel very strongly with those things. As far as the projects are concerned, I just want to add one other thing with that. When I went to the council meeting, one of the things they talked about was the apartments that Barb had said. They have 3 bedrooms, and they have 2 bedrooms, and they have 1 bedroom. And I thought, oh, that's great. You know, we're going to have families come in there, and we're going to have some beautiful new apartments for them. I thought that was great. But then I thought, but this council's not talking about the mean income average in the town. And the developer's not talking about how much they're going to charge for rent in these apartments. So I thought to myself that, well, maybe the reason why they're not talking about it is because they're going to really charge $800, $1,500. Can an average family pay that here in town? And that concerns me. That's one of the things that I became very concerned about in the town. As far as the reason why I'm running is that I feel that we need someone on the council that can speak for the taxpayers of the town. We have these wonderful projects, but we're just not asking, I think, the right questions. I think once we do that, I think we're going to be better off. I'm very, very passionate about the center and about the museum and about losing our services. That's one of the big things that I am major concerned about in this community. So as far as that concerned, I think we do have to do more with less. We have to find ways to get high-paying jobs. I think that once we do that, we get the industry in here. We look at other economic developments that we can bring to Platteville that will bring those high-paying jobs. I think a lot of things will fall into place once we do that. And those are the things that I'm very passionate about here. Thank you.
Okay, Barb.
It's almost mind-boggling what we've already talked about and what more to add. Economic development has come up numerous times, and I've been involved on many committees regarding development at all components of our community. We do want jobs. We want jobs with benefits. That is a difficult decision to make, to find businesses that are going to work in this town, to hire our people, and to offer benefits. If all things considered, it's the benefit component and the economic development concern that we're talking about. You were talking about the apartments. Well, they're all based on a formula, based on the financing that was used to build those buildings. There's a financing structure, so when people go in, they have to look at their income before they can rent. And then the rent is based on their income, so there are a formula built there. But anyway, my point in time is we've had more going on in this community by the initiatives of the last 4 or 5 councils than I think we've had prior in my memory. There has been strong initiatives in the last 5 to 6 years, the last 5 to 6 councils, which every year is a council, is than I ever remember. Every question is debated. Every council member comes prepared to answer the big questions, to ask our staff to be prepared. That, to me, is part of our responsibility as a council member to do, is to be prepared, ask those questions. Our future will be more aggressive. We need it, we know it. Our community members know it. Well, thank you.
Okay, Bill.
Well, Deb and I have talked a lot about the senior center tonight, and I think that's important, but something that hasn't been discussed, I don't think at all, is tourism. And I remember Kathy Kopp speaking at the council meeting when the budget hearing was going on about the attractions that Platteville has that draw tourists here, and tourists spend a lot of dollars. And I'll go back to one of my main concerns about the budget is the museum, or are the museums. When I first visited New York City back in 1970, I was surprised at how many local residents of the city had never been to the Statue of Liberty. And now that I live in Platteville, I'm surprised at the number of people who live here who've never been to the museum. When I worked there, I was amazed at the tourists, especially in the summertime. I remember one particular day, we had 3 big school buses come from Iowa State University at Ames, all because of the mine. They all ate here. They spent the night here. That's a lot of tourist business. And it was incredible to me how many people went through that museum, but not necessarily local people. And I guess that's the one issue that I wish would have been addressed more.
Okay, Eileen.
I would say that the overarching words maybe would be economic development, and that covers so many areas. I don't care if you're talking about business, I don't care if you're talking about housing, you know, anything, tourists, anything that will bring people to Platteville, because we've been told more than once, and I experienced this as a realtor, they come to Platteville and they really like it. And they really would like to live here, and our schools have to be noted as such a plus. We have great schools, and having the university right on our doorstep is very important as well. So I think that Barb mentioned the chamber. I recently attended a meeting, and there's another meeting coming up about workforce development, because one of the other things we know is that if you want to attract businesses here, you have to have the workforce. So we have to find a way to let people know that if you move to Platteville, we have businesses, as Barb already noted, that are looking to hire you. So we need to work with businesses to get that word out. But I think that economic development just covers everything that I feel most strongly about. It's a varied kind of issue to tackle. But I think that everything that's been mentioned here can be covered under that. So that's what I'm gonna say.
Okay. Then we're going to ask the candidates each to answer one last question. But it is kind of the punchline question, which is, why should people vote for you for the Common Council? And we'll start with Barb.
Why not? No, that was a joke. I am impressed with our candidates, myself included. I think we care. I think we know what our community needs. Why you want to vote for me is I have been involved in our community, been involved in numerous organizations, and just have spent so much time being involved in the community. I think I commend Eileen. She goes to every single function in this town that's available to attend. I will admit I can't even keep up with her in support of her efforts. Workforce development is, I think, the number one key that I didn't even mention, but it certainly is. The people I visit with day in and day out are looking for jobs. They want jobs with benefits. They want full-time jobs with benefits. That is a struggle in every single community. They're even willing to drive if they can find jobs with benefits. And so having a big initiative such as the Workforce Development Project that the Chamber is putting on is really, really important. Tourism, I failed to say that before. I think that as we've mentioned, Kathy Kopp, Executive Director of the Chamber, is on the Governor's Council on Tourism. She runs the Welcome Center. Tourism brings people to town, and as was mentioned, and it takes a lot of work to bring our visitors to town and to take care of what their needs in this town. And I wanted to talk about the museum, as was mentioned, Bill, right? Bill mentioned about visiting the museum. When my son was small, we visited the museum every Saturday because he loved the train. And so I spent a lot of time and money at the museum. When my grandchildren came to town recently, as cold as it is in the one building, we went through the Jameson archives and spent a lot of time there. They loved it. So there are some opportunities right now to even go to the museum. for little people, I think we have a lot to offer. And we have a lot to offer, maybe as you're saying, Deb, with what we have financially. And it's not, it's going to take initiative to use the budget we have to bring more for the single families. I think that's extremely important. Housing, I think we have good housing. It's a matter of getting it out there. The realtors are working hard at it. I think getting the committees together. That's been mentioned a number of times over the years about working collaboratively. In fact, I think the university put that idea together, but it takes time and energy to do that. So anyway, my goal would be to help in these initiatives. I obviously would like to see the budget, always discuss the budget. And I think we do. We're fortunate to have council members that discuss that budget all the time. We have every single item on that agenda is discussed fluidly. So it's not just there, it is discussed at the meetings. The work sessions are very informative, and our staff spend a lot of time having the answers ready. So anyway, I would like to continue this economic. I think we have a momentum. The last 5 to 6 years really started a momentum of being positive in our community. And I want to continue to see that happen. So if I should have the opportunity to be elected, I will certainly help in this initiative, as many of my associates would be doing. Thank you.
Okay, Barb. I'm sorry. Bill.
I can keep talking.
No, it's my bad.
Bill or me?
Bill.
Oh,
Okay. Why should you vote for me? Well, first of all, you should live in the 2nd District. As I said at the beginning, there are a lot of things I have to learn about city government in Platteville. But I'm willing to learn them, and I'm willing to listen to my constituents. And that's the only reason I can think of. I'm willing to listen.
Okay, Eileen.
I guess I'm going to echo again a little bit of what everyone else has said. I choose to do this, and I'm very flattered that the voters in my district have consistently voted for me each time I was up for re-election. I hope that indicates that you have some trust in my ability to serve as a council member. I'm currently the council president. That's not something that I choose. That is something that the council votes for once a year. They vote for a council president. I'm honored to be selected. It's not something I'm going after. But I think it's given me a much more visible, probably, position than I had when you're not sitting there chairing the meeting. I believe that I listen. I certainly try to listen to all the constituents, whether you're on District 2 or whether you're in the city. It's not uncommon to be at the grocery store and have someone come up and say, could I talk to you a minute? And I'm very happy that they do that. That's how I know what people are thinking about, or I get a phone call at home, or I get emails. So I guess if you vote for me, you pretty much get more of what I've given you already, which is my time, my dedication, my belief that the city has to experience economic growth if it's going to even sustain itself. Living in a rural area, it can be difficult to sustain the things that you want to have in your community. I think that we need to really, really concentrate on making sure that the people who are living here feel comfortable here, but also that we can attract and welcome new people to our community, because we need all of them. It was mentioned about the students at the university. They are an economic driver, as well as the people who work at the university. They're a large economic driver of our community, and many businesses rely on students to work in their businesses. And so we are fortunate to have some of those businesses because there is a workforce here, sort of a built-in workforce, at least for 2 or 3 years. But yeah, attracting new residents, I think is critical, having an attractive place to live, and yes, having the services, some of which we unfortunately reduced budgets on this year. It doesn't mean we don't value them. So I would like your vote again. I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay, finally, Deb.
I returned to Platteville in 2011. I was born and raised here. My family's here. My brothers are here. My parents were here. They grew up here in this town. I feel very compassionate about this town. I believe it's a small town with big city benefits, you might say. I enjoy the arts. I enjoy the university. I enjoy the sports, the hospitality in this community. I certainly enjoy the Senior Citizen Center, the museum, the services that the city has. I believe that the city embraces its legacy. I think the UWP heritage and our commitment to its citizens. These are the things that I am compassionate about. How do I get there? If elected, if you so honor me with that, I believe it's important to be fiscally responsible with your budget, with your tax dollars. I believe it's imperative that we are transparent, keeping you informed. And as my slogan says, I'm going to be loud and I'm going to be proud to serve you if you so do vote for me. I also feel that as a taxpayer, we're going to have difficult decisions. We all are going to be in the same boat here. We're going to have to maybe cut services. We don't want to do that. We don't want to destroy our heritage as we're doing it. And as I said at the beginning, that a budget is a moral document, and we have to look at that. We have to look at our economic development, and we have to look at how it affects the people here in Platteville. These are the things that I can bring to the table also is my experience. I am used to working with state governments. I'm used to working with local governments. I ran my own business for a lot of years. I was the president of my union, so I know how to negotiate. I can do time studies, so I can bring some experience to that maybe is not offered here. These are the things that we have to look at in our budget. What are the assets we have, and how can we use them the best? We need to do more with less. We have to learn to live within that budget. But we also have to be compassionate to our citizens. We need to be transparent. We have to keep you informed. And I believe, if you elect me, that I can do that. I would appreciate your vote. I hope you be loud and proud with me. Thank you.
All right. Thanks to all the candidates for appearing tonight and for their answers to the questions. If you are wanting to rewatch this will be on the City of Platteville's YouTube channel later this week or early next week. We're going to take about 5 minutes to reconfigure here for the school board. And before I forget, by the way, the coffee back there is provided by Badger Brothers, and we thank them for that, speaking of businesses. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes with the school board forum.
Good one.